Again.
Oh, okay, so we're talking about absentee ballots. The other day you said, this is Jan, I'm Jim, and you were talking about, oh, these old people in the nursing homes gotta vote, and so it got me thinking we need to make a little video about absentee ballots. And so I want to start with talking about the election commission down on Nixon. There's 5 people, Mark Luttrell's the boss, and there's a guy down there named Benny Smith. He used to be there, but he got promoted. He actually does it at the state level now. And this is Benny Smith. I have tape, but I don't have it. This is Benny Smith. He's an IT guy. He was an election commissioner. There's 5 of them. He's one of them for years. And he knows all about elections. He was actually on a YouTube video. You can look up Benny Smith, fraction, I think it's called fraction voting, fraction magic. And he worked with this lady to write a book on election fraud. So he's pretty famous in this field, so famous that he actually got promoted. He's in Nashville now doing this. But he's an IT guy, software guy, real tall, good looking guy. And after we went down to talk to the county commissioners one time, it was when they were trying to get rid of the PCM CIA cards. Like they had machines with old memory cards in them. And they were trying to get rid of the memory cards, and the commissioners were terrified to touch them. They had like 10 different elections on them things, and you see little cards like this. And they didn't know how they were going to dispose of them. It was a big deal. They had a whole meeting about it. So at the end of the night, Benny and I were out it was dark, out talking outside there. And I learned about the guy, and he goes, well, I'm going to get Halderman to do it. You ever heard of the Halderman report?
No.
It's a thing called the Halderman report. It's this Texas professor, and they gave him permission to look at machines or something like that. And he wrote a big report, and a lot of people reference the Halderman report. If you look, you'll see it. So he goes, well, I'm going to get Halderman to do that. I go, you know Halderman? And he goes, yeah. He texted him right there and said, these guys want to give you $100 an hour, whatever he said, to come here and destroy these stupid little cards and like take a hammer to them or something like that. And so I was impressed with the guy that he knew how to do all that. But then we had a meeting before, I'm losing when it was. You might have even been there. And we had him in a meeting hall, and we invited him to come. I forget, he said he'd come and talk to us, which he usually doesn't do. And he talked to all of us, and I leaned over to him. This is the whole reason I'm doing this video, is I leaned over to him and I said, Benny, do you think the 2020 election was rigged? And I'll never forget what he did to me. He looked around at me and he sighed. He was sitting down and he said, whoever wins the 2020 Shelby County election will control a budget of close to $1 billion. And I'm going to write that down. $1 billion. The question is, what would you do for $1 billion? That's just one county. There's 3,000 counties in the U.S., right? So the question is, okay, you got a budget of $1 billion. What would you do to win that? If you're the mayor, you've got a budget of $100,000 or something like Charlotte or somebody. Would you put all that in yard signs? You know, it's a lot of money and time and all that. Or if you knew a guy that could do some mischief in these machines and printing ballots, fake ballots, which I'll talk about, would you do it? Because this is the amount of money you're talking about. And so the question to me is what kind of crime is this? Like, would you do that? Me as a guy, would I do that? You know, if I'm down on my luck and someone says, I want you to take this USB stick and stick it in this machine and type username, password, would you do that? If you totally need to get this money, would you do that? And you would probably say, well, from a woman's point of view, maybe you'd never do that, never. But from a man's point of view, you would. There's places where you would do that, especially if you hate the other candidates and you're going, you justify it, whether you should be doing this kind of thing. So so I want people to realize that there's a lot of money involved. And so would people do bad things? Somebody would. There's always that guy that would drive a truck or do a USB stick or something like that. So then the question is, I was talking to a guy at work, how do you do that fraud? How would you do that? Let me see these ones. So I went down for training the other day, and this is kind of, you'd probably agree, that's what that looks like down there on Nixon. It's a very, very organized madhouse as to what's going on. I know, I'm all sweaty. Thank you. I think I have diabetes or something. That's not a sign of diabetes. So every one of these people is throwing USB sticks in there. There must be, I don't know, I'm gonna find this number, how many contractors Linda Phillips has working for, probably 30, that are running around putting stuff in these machines and updating the software and recertifying this, and I don't know, there's gonna be 50 people running around that building, would you say? You've been down here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot of work. And next to every one of these machines is a bucket with software and pamphlets and training manuals. It is organized, it's very, very organized. And so the question is, of those 30, 50 people running around doing this, they're all like guys like me, like IT guys that, play video games at night. Would any of those guys go nuts on that? And so I wanted to lay out what the thought of what the fraud was in 2020, and maybe that'll lean into absentee ballots here. And the wisdom is that these machines or the tabulators are all Windows 10, and they all have the same username and password to get into them, because you can't have all these workers have separate username and passwords. They should.
Put it closer so you can see.
They should have separate username and passwords, right? That's why you do that, so you know who did what on what machine. But they don't. I can point you to a case they just did in Georgia where they said they all use the same username and password. I'm going to put the password on this video. I'm going to go find it. I didn't get time to do it. And so it's pretty loosey-goosey. And I get it. They got a lot of stuff to do, and they're not looking for foul play, but they need to. So the question is, can you telnet into, I talked to Linda Phillips once. I said, do you even know what telnet is? Telnet is how your IT guy goes into your computer and looks around for you and helps you fix the stuff that's broken. It's called telnet. It's a program like Windows Remote Desktop or something like that. So there's a way to telnet into any of these machines with a username and password and do whatever you want. Anything. The Windows 10, they use Microsoft SQL Server, and everybody in my area knows how to do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So anybody, if somebody gives them a password, anybody can get into that?
You have to know how to do it. I don't quite know how to do it because I kind of don't want to ask, but you need to know the IP address of the box. Everything that's connected to the internet has its own IP address. Mm-hmm. Your router in your house has an IP address. And I don't even want to go into all this, but you have to telnet to that IP address, like 192.168.32.9. That's the box. And once you're in there, you're going to be asked for a username and password. And you shouldn't know that, right? Same with your home router. There's firewalls and all that. But anyway, the thought is, could this guy, get into there where these things all come together? Could he get in there for 10 minutes? You know he could. You know he could. You don't want it to think that he could, but this is what we're talking about. And this is what we're talking about. So you get in there, you change the votes. That other video you probably saw on my Rumble channel, Memphis TN, has a video of some of these experts doing that. Did I see them do it? No. Do I believe they did it? Yes. It's like, show me the evidence, all that. So the thing is, okay, you went in there and you changed the vote. You made this guy bigger and that one smaller, right? Now you got to have evidence. You got to print up ballots. You can go down to Nixon Road, not right now, and give them $20 cash, and they'll give you a USB stick of all the voters that voted. I've done it twice. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It shows you all the voters by precinct for Shelby County. There's 600,000 of them. It shows you their name, their address, their age, their party. There might be something else. And it shows when they voted. It doesn't say who they voted for.
Right.
It just says when they voted. So they use that to go, oh, this person's 100 years old, they haven't voted in 3 elections, they're probably dead. And they use that to clean it off. But what the bad guys do is, they go, here's a guy that hadn't voted in a while. He lives in this huge apartment building. There's like 1,000 of these people there. And so he prints off ballots for that apartment. They request those ballots, right? I don't know how to do exactly all this. They request the ballots. You might need the last 4 of a social to request an absentee ballot. I forget. I did it once. You get a ballot. They all go to an apartment building. They go into the mail room. Nobody's expecting these. They go on the floor. You get a bad guy, sweep them up, fill them out, mail them back. You just mailed 1,000 bad votes, fake votes. Again, is that possible?
Yeah.
Big money, big money. You would hope it was fair. Nothing's fair at this point. So that's the thought of what happened, that's the thought of what you do for fraud today. And so what I really want to convince people to talk about is, do we really need absentee voting? Do we need all that? Can we get rid of that? Can we change it? And so I'll tell you some of the changes that people have done. I talked to a researcher in, I think it was Wisconsin. I got her phone number. And this is when I went to Maricopa and canvassed. I met all these people. After 2021, I went there. It's 110 degrees. We walked around, met, you talk. There's some smart people there. She was part of a thing in whatever state, I'm gonna say Wisconsin, where they went together with the legislators and they said, we want to change who gets an absentee ballot. This is not cool. And so they came up with this great statement. This is just a way that maybe Brent Taylor could make we could maybe change absentee ballots to get less of them. I want less of them. You're not nodding your head. You're not buying this.
I'm listening.
Okay, so
I'm buying it.
this is, well, your original argument to me was, what about nursing homes?
We haven't got there yet.
Yeah. So,
I've got to interject, you're gonna have fraud a little bit in anything you do.
So
There's just no way to make it 100%.
right
That
now,
little bit.
my wife told me
Exactly.
that there's already been
Completed
30
the whole-
million mail-in ballots for this, up till today, 30 million mail-in ballots. That half the people that have voted so far today are mail-in. That's a lot of people. Anyway, let me tell you what you can do, because I try to lay out the fraud that I'm talking about requires absentee mail-in balloting. It requires that, right? What I said about you flip the machine and then you print these things and you mail them in, or you go to wherever, you get them back, right? If that fraud mechanism is true, if you had less mail-in, it would reduce that amount of fraud. Like you said, not make it zero, but maybe reduce it. So what she did, she worked with legislators and said they came up with a formula for who gets a mail-in ballot, and that is, if for you to vote, you require an ambulance to go vote, you can get a mail-in ballot. That's the only way you can get a mail-in ballot. They changed the law, and it went from like this many to this many.
I believe you can get a mail-in ballot if you're 70 and over, 75, without having any physical disability.
I'm trying to find a way
But
that
that's
R's and D's, both people. The guy I talked to about this was a D, and I said, we just want to get rid of so much absentee ballots. I don't care who wins, who's what, but there's no need to have this. I say it's like, I was trying to think of an analogy. I said, say you're First Horizon Bank, and you decide you're going to have a bunch of $100 bills in the parking lot with a card table, and you're going to do some check cashing right there. You go, well, that's probably a bad idea, right? There's just too much risk of someone taking your money. And to me, absentee ballots with this scenario is just too much risk. The military are taken care of. That's one way you could do it, is say you don't get a mail-in ballot except if you need an ambulance to go vote. Now, that's severe, but it's a way to pull it back. What was the other one here? Oh, I actually got a hold of the University of Memphis, the French department, and I met a guy and I interviewed him at Nukes. He doesn't know much about anything. He spoke English. He's voted in France forever. And I asked him about their election. I said, how do you do absentee? He goes, we do surrogates. He goes, you pick one person as your surrogate. Like if you're in a nursing home, you can pick me, you can pick anybody. You can pick one person, they do paperwork, and they become your surrogate. And so when they go vote, they vote twice. You can only surrogate one person. Interesting, right? Another way I'm advocating that. I'm just saying, there's ways to make this just like better, less, oh my godness.